Hello, Otaku Fujoshi and the Anime Curious. My name is RandomSama613, and this is Anime Opinions. This week I'm actually taking a request for a video. I had it, I want to say a month and a half ago or so. I'm sorry it took me this long to get to it. I've been a little bit busy. And it was a request for my top 10 anime dubs. So I'm going to preface this with, I don't watch a lot of dubbed anime because I watch anime as they come out, and then I eventually buy the DVDs or Blu-rays at this point. And then I watch the dub. So I'm currently waiting for a lot of anime to come out onto Blu-ray, but I have watched enough dubbed anime that I do have some favorites and some that I really just didn't like. But this is just going to be the ones that I did like. First off, these are in no particular order. I have a list of 10 right here in front of me, and I'm just going to talk about them. It's going to be a little more informal just because I've had a crazy week, and I don't want to script things. So, I'm going to start out with let's pick one on the list. I'm going to start with Helsing Ultimate. Helsing Ultimate's dub is actually quite good. The original series dub is okay. I think they use some of the same actors. For those of you unfamiliar with Helsing, it takes place in, I'd argue, I think it's semi-modern day England, and it follows Victoria Saris, who is a cop who ends up being transformed into a vampire by Alucard, also known as Vlad Dracul, or Count Dracula, as he's probably more commonly known. And it's the entire storyline thereof. The dub is very, very good. The voice acting fits really well. I think that Alucard's voice actor is really good. I think that Saris's voice actor really, they meld together really well. All the different side characters are voiced really well, and it's not going to be as good as, I judge anime dubs a little bit differently because the voice acting is not going to be very good. Anime voice acting isn't very good, it just sounds good to our ears. So I think that for what they did, it sounded very good. So I recommend the anime anyway because Helsing is just awesome. There's lots of blood, guts, and betrayal and juicy plot points, and it's great to watch. So that's definitely a really good dub. Another one is Cowboy Bebop. It's a little bit older. It's like that's late 90s for anime, and most dubs from then are god-awful. They're bad. Cowboy Bebop's dub is very, very good. If you haven't heard of Cowboy Bebop, I think I've mentioned it a couple times previously. It takes place in a future where space travel is possible, and all sorts of other fun stuff. And it follows the crew of the Bebop and their varying adventures. That's the quickest summary I can give you. The voices really fit the characters. I think that Spike's voice is really, really good, as is, I think FaZe is really good as well. Jets is also quite good. Edwards, is okay, but I think there's, it still fits fairly well. And I also recommend the anime because Cowboy Bebop is a classic, and it's also very, very good. Next up, I'm going to go with the Reader Daioh OVAs. I haven't watched the TV series, so I don't know how that dub is, but the OVAs are dubbed fairly well. I realize that things that are done in more of a movie style, such as what I'm going to mention probably next, are going to have better voice actors, so the dubs are going to be better in general. But I'm still not going to discount it just because it probably has better voice actors. I think that the main character is voiced really well. I'm sorry I can't remember the names. Not something I can keep in my head very well. I know that the villains are voiced really well. All the side characters are voiced excellently. They fit really well. They don't feel very off, which is a problem that can also happen with a lot of dubs, is the voices just don't quite fit the characters. And I think everything on this list, all of them fit the characters really well. I also recommend the Reader Daioh OVAs. They're very entertaining. They're like, I think a total of an hour and a half, because there's 4 of them. So they're pretty quick and they're a lot of fun, and it's a good story. Next up, I'm going to go with Princess Mononoke, or for that matter, anything that Studio Ghibli does. They always seem to get really good voice actors. Again, this is it's in a separate category because it has big-name voice actors like Billy Crudup and Minnie Driver and people like that. They have big-name actors. Like Ponyo has Liam Neeson in it. So it's kind of hard to compare them, but I think that anything that Studio Ghibli does has really good dub. Princess Mononoke, if you haven't watched it, first off, what's wrong with you? This is an amazing movie. But it follows Prince Ashitaka, who lives with, he's from a small village, and this village is attacked by a boar god who's been possessed by a demon, and he is cursed by the boar god. He's bitten, and he has a curse that's going to consume his body. So he's forced to leave the village to try and cure himself. And it's a very symbolism-heavy movie, but it's still very, very good. The story's excellent. I love all the characters. So it's really good. The dub is excellent. I actually haven't watched it in Japanese. I've only watched the English dub, so I don't have a comparison. Maybe I'll get around to watching it in Japanese just so I can compare it. But the English dub is really, really, really good. Next up, I'm going to go with Berserk. Not the OVAs, the original series. The dub isn't half bad. It's not great, but it's better than a lot of series. Berserk follows Guts, the Black Swordsman, and it's his story. It's what goes on in his life and how he it goes on in this dark medieval style world with demons, and it's a really compelling story, and it's very, very interesting. And there's a lot of layers to it. It's very graphic, so I do recommend it, but it's not for if you don't do well with blood and gore and everything. It's not for you, and it's definitely for a mature audience. So, but I recommend it because it's very good, and the characters are compelling. All the voices fit fairly well, but not amazingly. I'd say this is probably the weakest dub on this list overall. And I still recommend it because the dub's passable. It's not great. As to much better dubs, I'm gonna talk about Appleseed and Appleseed Ex Machina, the Geneon dub, not the, I believe it's Funimation acquired the property. Their voice actors don't quite sound right to me, and that may just be because I've heard the Geneon dub, and those voices fit really, really well. I talked about this a little bit in my Appleseed 13 review, how the voice acting just didn't seem to fit properly, and that really does have to do probably with the Geneon dub being so good. I've already talked about what Appleseed is about. It takes place in a dystopian future where humanity's basically blown themselves up. And there's some scattered pockets of humanity still left, and it follows Dunan Newt, who is a soldier in one of the armies, and gets rescued and is brought to one of those bastions of humanity, Olympus. And it follows her, basically, and there's plots within the government to overthrow it, stuff like that. It's kind of cyberpunk, I think would be the greatest way to describe it. So, really good anime. I don't recommend Appleseed 13, it's not that great, but the two movies with the Geneon dubs are really, really good. For my next one, I'm going to go with Darker Than Black. I've also talked about Darker Than Black before. It's probably one of my favorite anime franchises, if they'd ever finish it. The dub voices fit the characters really well. They may seem a little bit flat for the contractors that don't have a lot of emotion. That's because contractors and dolls don't have emotions, per se. They kind of do, but not entirely. So I think it's okay that they feel kind of flat, but they still have a lot of emotional inflection within them, even though they sound flat. And then the non-contractor, non-doll characters have a lot of voice depth to them. They sound really interesting, and the voices suit the characters really well. And I just like Darker Than Black, so I don't care if the dub's bad or not. I'm still going to watch the series. Darker Than Black takes place in, I'd say it's almost modern day, probably a little bit more futuristic, not like a ton. And has to do with, there's two gates that appeared, Heaven's Gate and Hell's Gate, and the stars don't exist anymore, and what the stars that are seen represent contractors, who are people who basically have superpowers, but they have a drawback. And this is their price, and it can be anything from they have to break a finger, to they just have to put stones in a certain order, to moxibustion, to anything. It can be anything. And the relative power of their power does not correspond to their price. So I think it's a really compelling universe, and I think that's why I like it. And like I said, the dub's good. It's pretty darn good dub. I wouldn't say it's the best, but it's definitely better than certain other ones that I won't mention. Next up is Black Lagoon. Black Lagoon's dub is fantastic. I can't actually watch it in Japanese because it just doesn't sound correct to me. Because all the characters are from different sections of the world, and if they all have a Japanese accent, they just sound funny to me. So, Rock's voice actor is very good. I'd have to say the Balalaika's is excellent. Dailo Chang's is as well. Really, all of the Lagoon crew's voices are great. So Duchess is good, Benny's is good, Rebby's is excellent. And Black Lagoon just follows a mercenary company, basically. There's a little more to it than that, obviously. But I've talked about that previously in, I think, Roberta's Blood Trail. I think in that review I talked a little bit more about the series. But I highly recommend that series as well. The dub is very, very good, which is nice to see. Okay, I'm down to my last two, I believe. And I'm going to do the second to last one's going to be Gundam the 8th MS Team. I personally like Gundam a lot. I know that it's not for everybody. It's a very large genre. If you don't like mecha anime, you're not going to like Gundam. But I like Gundam because it gives you that mecha anime feel, but it also gives you like a political climate and interpersonal relationships. And I just really like how those two kind of meet up. And 8th MS Team doesn't follow like the big grand battles like Gundam Wing, which is in a different universe, does, or 0079, the original Mobile Suit Gundam. Those follow kind of like the big players on the screen. 8th MS team follows a small, basically the everyday soldier, as they're fighting the 1-year war on Earth against Zeon. And it follows, I can't remember his name. I can't remember the main character's name, but it follows him, and it's basically it's basically a love story between him and a person on the Zeon side. His name is Aina Sahaline. And it's very interesting. I think the voice acting is really good. I kind of like the nitty-gritty, just what were the ground troopers doing, while everybody else was duking it out up in space or on the ground or whatever. And I think it's a really compelling series. It's short. It's only 13 episodes. So I highly recommend it. The voice acting is pretty good for being a 90s series. So it was definitely one of the better dubs I've watched. And then my final dub recommendation is Durarara. I'll be perfectly honest, I haven't watched this in dub. The only dub I've seen of it are little snippets from their previews, so it could be totally misleading, but the series is good enough that who cares how bad the dub is. Durarara takes place in modern-day Tokyo, I believe, and it follows Mikado Ryugamine as he comes from the country into the city to go to school at the behest of one of his friends from online, Kita Masao. And then there's no easy way to explain what goes on, because all sorts of shit happens. It's crazy. It has supernatural elements, there's a bunch of compelling characters, all of them are interesting, all of them have backstory, all of them matter. And I love this series. I'm pretty sure the dub is good because it sounded, from the bits and pieces that I saw. I got to see a preview years ago at SakuraCon before it had actually come out, and it looked pretty good and it sounded pretty good. So I'm presuming the dub is good. When I actually get a chance to watch the dub and hear it, I will, of course, update if that's necessary. If I think that the dub was awful, I will let you guys know. But from what I've seen, it looks like the dub is pretty good. So those are my top 10 dubbed anime. What did you guys think? Do you disagree? If you don't like dubbed anime at all, I completely understand. It's not for everybody. Go ahead and leave your comments down below. I do like to hear from you guys. That's how I decided to do this video, because it was a request. I'll find the guy's username and there'll be an annotation. I'm really sorry I can't remember it off the top of my head. If you guys want to see more videos from me, go ahead and subscribe. I do post something every Thursday. I'm going to try to keep it that, even though my personal life has gotten very busy. I am also doing the 12 days of anime this year. I will have a video every single day from the 14th to the 25th. That's actually what I'm going to be doing next. So go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. Like I said, I really do. It lets me know that I'm doing something right. And I like to know that I am indeed doing something right. So until next time, I'm RandomSama613. Spin anime opinions, and watch more anime.